Hey everybody, welcome to Away Games, Chicago Cubs podcast that still exists with multiple comedians hosting this one. Usually it's two. Today we have three comedians from Chicago originally. One is currently there right now. This is the big season preview, 2019 season preview podcast. I'm Kevin McCaffrey, here with Adam Mamwala.
Hello.
As usual. And then, as not usual, but semi-regularly, Ken Schultz from Chicago. What's up?
Gentlemen, my pleasure. Thank you for having me back, as always.
Sure.
It's always good to get together and discuss what's going to be a ... interesting year.
Absolutely,
I think.
and looking forward to seeing you in person next week.
Yes. Opening day, we are getting together. So
opening day.
Where are we going to watch it? Opening day? Have we? I mean,
let's discuss it on this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not my place unless you want to take a 2-day train ride. But,
sure. Yeah, we go. Ken comes out, and then we go to Mundelein. Yeah.
I do have a show that night, so if you're interested in going to like Kelly's or something to watch it, we could do that. Unless we think there's going to be a soccer game on.
I could do
we could do your place.
Right. I could do. Yeah, we can definitely do my apartment. I always dig that. Otherwise, yeah, Kelly's in the East Village is a place we've gone. That's in theory a Cubs bar.
By the way, for anyone listening who's thinking about getting into podcasting 101, always make plans on air.
Well,
Don't do it after. Don't do
This
it
is for the fans.
It is.
This is for if people are in New York and want to hang out. Yes.
Bother us.
for a Cubs bar, Kelly's sure seems to find any excuse possible to cancel all showings of Cubs games. Whenever they can.
Yeah.
Wasn't there like around the All-Star game? Didn't we? There was like a Celtic band that showed up there, so they decided that no baseball that night.
Well, but when we were there to watch a playoff game. Wasn't it like a Nationals Cubs playoff game, and this guy insisted that he wanted to hear the end of like a soccer game because he was a regular and
they had the audio of the soccer game on, and the people behind the bar were shrugging.
It's crazy.
It's like so
maybe not Kelly's.
Either that, or I will give one plug if you are visiting New York on opening day. Standings is a tiny bar, but it is great. They have free hot dogs all day and a bunch of TVs, and it's a legit sports bar. So there we go.
The most important thing is we're going to be watching together.
Yeah, yep. Hell yeah! And this is our big. This is basically what our first big official episode was last year, and now we are in our sophomore season, hoping to put off the sophomore slump. We're starting real strong here.
We started with the freshman 15, which is the 15 people who listen to us consistently, and now we're trying to avoid this sophomore slump.
I would say we have multiples of 15 that listen
we have
to.
More than 15.
I think given the way that 2018 ended, I don't think you guys have to worry about a sophomore slump so much anymore. That really, anything that doesn't end in 2 days of sadness and shame is a win as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I was there I was in person on both of them, so I gotta shake that streak off for sure.
Brutal.
So yeah, what's the first thing we want to get into? Season preview wise, Adam, you had the list of questions. Do you have any that you want to get into?
Gosh. Well,
first?
You know what? I actually listened back to a little bit of our episode last year as we were predicting 2018, and we did actually a reasonably good job, I'd say. But one of the things that we started with was like
World Series.
What's that? No, we were all wrong about our predictions.
Does that qualify as a reasonably good job?
Yeah, we.
Every playoff series played. So,
well, I would say we were excited about and worried about things that seemed correct.
Yes.
That's how I would define it. Also, you described Tommy La Stella as being underratedly hot, and now he's not even on the team, and
even more underrated.
Yeah,
in that case,
I totally agree with that sentiment. But what we started with last year, and I think would be a good place to start, was like, what'd you think of the offseason? And I feel like we know the answers to that, but like we were a lot more excited about last year's offseason than I imagine we are this year. So Ken, why don't you kick us off with like, how do you feel about how things went or didn't went as they say?
A whole lot didn't went.
Yeah, I'm honestly more excited about correcting your grammar in that last sentence than I am about the move the Cubs made.
On brand. Read them at Cubs Den, right? And Baseball Prospectus, the main page too. We're getting the plugs in weird places now, but
in the proper space too. It's I'm legit, not really.
Oh, you're legit.
When your off season consists of signing a bench player and is it 3 relievers who are all now currently about to head for the injured list?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yes,
the last 4 or 5 months might as well have just not existed, honestly.
Right.
Yeah,
because it's Descalso, Cedeno, Barnett, and
Brock, who's
Brock.
Yes, technically not injured, but post-mono, which doesn't seem like the best way to approach pitching.
Post-mono is my favorite type of art, though.
Yeah, post-mono. It's got a high arm slot. The velocity's down.
I was going to say post-mono is my favorite rapper, but I don't even know if that's a reference.
These are, but they all work. We're coming at it. We're punching up the room. Yeah.
But yeah, congrats, Brad, on getting the kissing disease. So that's at least a good thing.
It is the make-out disease. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brad's getting around.
And so yeah, the off season was, 5 months of stasis is never good when you're trying to get excited about your presumably World Series contending baseball team. And yet, regardless of that, they are still a World Series contending baseball team. That fact does not change. Yep. And it's more the reminder to myself every time that I start to, fall down a Twitter rabbit hole of people getting upset about the lack of Bryce Harper signing or whatever, that either way, this is still going to be one hell of a great team to follow. And happily enough, it seems like they're also going to be a lot of fun if the past few weeks of spring training are any indication.
Well, yeah, and it's 2019, so we are now entering the 5th season that is presumably going to be a winning season. And just that in and of itself is an incredible thing when you really think about it.
Yeah, longest of all of our lifetimes, far and away. And that's got to be, I think, the first time since the late 60s, early 70s group where you'd have 5 seasons in a row of plus 500 baseball. So, yeah, I mean, as much as the offseason was bad for the Cubs. And the thing is, too, the offseason was also bad for, 90% of all MLB teams?
Right. For most teams, it's like you try to think who added, and you've got, the Phillies did a lot of – and the teams that added did a shit ton of adding. So it's like the Reds –
play in the Central too, which kind of sucks.
But, exactly. Yeah, the Reds added everything they could. The Phillies, obviously, the Cardinals added one big everything they could.
Yeah, and the Brewers, they've added around the great core that they have. And getting Ferrell is a huge move for them.
And that was their weakest spot, and they improved it significantly for not a lot. So it's hard to argue with that.
So yeah, the Cubs had the offseason of the Pirates, I guess.
Yeah, basically.
Concluding, which is not a good thing. That's never a good thing.
No.
But when you're starting from a team that is not Pirates, it should still be something to look forward to once we actually start playing.
I feel like, and as you say, it is with so much inaction, and I still do feel like the lack of willingness to really strongly improve this team in this exact level of the window, I feel like is inexcusable because these windows come and go, and they've never, we still have a couple more years where it should be great almost no matter what they do. The Cubs should still be contenders through 2021 at least, but it almost feels like, I'd imagine if you had a kid who was super smart and good at stuff, but then he misbehaved. He slept through some classes or broke curfew. He's
still a good kid.
That's the thing. That's what this Cubs team is to me. Where it's like, you guys fucked up. And not the players. Well, one player, but otherwise, it's like they fucked up a bunch. But at the same time, you're still going to get into a great college. You're still you're still doing good. So it's you could go all the way. It's
Kevin, when you were playing the hindsight game on our preview episode last year, there was something that I heard in the car on the way over here.
It's a monster.
I was sitting on top. That's how I drive.
Yeah.
That you said that just hearing it again a year later honestly made me almost throw up in my mouth, where you were pointing out hey, if the Cubs didn't sign Chatwood and also just didn't sign maybe Dunsing, they could have signed Arrieta. And I was like, oh yeah, that is something that happened that is very sad.
Hey, my feelings remain. Go ahead.
2 thoughts. First thought is that I like where we're going with this metaphor just because it sounds like all the Cubs need to get them on the right track is a nice talking to from Bob Saget and John Stamos.
They're willing.
And the thing, our 2019 season preview is hearkening back to our 2018 season preview, which is appropriate. But the thing about the Chatwood signing, and I think outside the podcast we've discussed this already, is that the Cubs were doing kind of the right thing, the thing that we wish they'd done this offseason, they did last offseason, where they thought, let's jump the market on somebody that we think a lot of people are going to be going after and let's take care of this right away so we don't have to worry about this hole in the rotation. And it turned out they picked the exact wrong guy to do it, unfortunately. But the intentions of that move were actually, in my mind, really good.
Well, and the wrong time to do it because it was an offseason where the market just didn't develop, which is the same as this offseason, although the difference, I guess, is that Harper and Machado ultimately still got what they thought they were getting. It just took a hell of a long time to get it.
Sure they did, but nobody else did.
Right.
Right.
Kimbrel still hasn't.
No, Kimbrel or Keuchel has not as well.
Yeah,
jeez.
Kimbrel and Keuchel, who two of the top 4 or 5 at the beginning of this offseason,
and
still.
a great cop show, Kimbrel and Keuchel.
Kimbrel and Keuchel, yes, exactly. An actor's warm up too, just sitting.
Kimbrel
in the,
and Keuchel.
Yes.
Kimbrel and Keuchel.
Yeah,
Hall of Famer, and nobody seems to want him. Like, he is legitimately the best relief pitcher of this generation, and nothing, crickets,
and that is such a position that almost literally every team could use. It is
a certain team that we all root for. Certainly wouldn't mind having him on board.
Yeah,
but it turns out that there's no money. Apparently,
there's no money. Don't pay attention to any numbers or facts about where money is or how much money is or what money's coming in, or the fact that that while the Ricketts. Their first few years with the Cubs, while they were the team was rightfully tearing down and rebuilding, that they were pocketing a shit ton of money back then, that they were not spending on the roster, that money still exists too, that money went somewhere.
Yeah, this is the offseason of like, well, so the bad news is we're not going to sign anybody, but what if we told you that we were going to start this dope YouTube channel?
It's a pretty good YouTube channel.
It's a great YouTube channel, but I mean, that's the equivalent of like, hey kids, sorry we can't go to Disney this year, but like, here's this clock radio.
Yeah, we can start a YouTube channel.
They put the Harper budget in puppies, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they picked some pretty good puppies, but still, I think it's part of why sneaking to a later prediction I'll make why I would have the Cubs over the Dodgers in a short series, because I believe the Cubs starting lineup will be better than the Dodgers starting lineup, and you can only play a certain number of people on the field, no matter how good your depth is, which everyone who didn't sign Bryce forgot, I guess.
Would that be great? The greatest video possible you could upload if you had a video of Javi being interviewed by a kid reporter, and he opens up the car, and it's Bryce Harper in the back.
Just tumbling around.
Yeah. Like, that's how they
Harper acting like a puppy.
God, would that blow up?
If the kid was just like, how many Bryce Harpers do you have? And Javi's like, one. one Harper, 7 dogs.
On the floor everywhere, too?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. If only. That would have been, that's a reveal.
Well, we did, I don't know what you wanted to start with, Kevin, but we did get a couple questions from listeners, so that could be a fun place to start, and then we'll kind of fill in the gaps.
Let's do a rapid fire listener questions.
Okay, so this is my favorite question that I think we've ever received.
Great.
It's
good.
Truly ridiculous. This is going to be the equivalent of who's going to be doing the best bullpen dance this year.
Tony Barnett.
Nice. You've thought about this,
Yep.
and you're ready. We're gonna circle back to that.
Sure.
Here's a question from Greg H. at Out of the Vines. Would you rather field a 2019 team with 2 Chris Bryants, 4 Wilson Contrerases, or sign and play 8 Chris Coghlans? Now that's the kind of question, hard-hitting question.
I'll tell you what, I think it's 2 Bryants, but I like Chris Coghlin a lot. It's not 8 Coghlans.
But if that means that there can only be 2 Bryants on the field defensively, you might have to go with 8 Coghlans.
Oh, wait, so does this mean the others aren't like replacement play? You're saying this is the only people on the field?
I didn't ask for clarification.
Okay.
But I am reading the question, and I want to know.
What do you think, Ken? And this is from a professional writer as well. Greg, I believe Greg is a contributor too.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Insider? Is he doing now? Or?
Yeah, we could probably just look his bio. And
Yes, he is a writer for Real Cubs Insider, and
Great.
talks
Nice.
about the Cubs and their prospects.
At Out of the Vines, yeah, exactly.
And Out of the Vines.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my answer to that's pretty simple. 2 Chris Bryants means 4 Chris Bryant eyes, and
That's a good answer.
It's a whole infield. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a constant loop of Peter Gabriel over and over and over again. So,
I think it's between 2 Bryants and 4 Contrerases is good too. But that's a good question that makes you think. That's one that could go on effectively wild.
Yeah, and he did also ask a less silly question, and I think this is a good way to start, at least in terms of talking about pitching. Which starter do you guys think has a good enough season to position himself to start Game 1 of the NLDS if the Cubs find themselves there at the end of the year? That's an interesting one, because I think you tend to think Lester, but I mean, you've got 5 starters who all could probably be number ones on other teams.
Off the top of my head, I would go with the starter from the last time the Cubs played in a Game 1 NLDS, and it's Kyle Hendricks.
Mm-hmm.
3.07
career ERA.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And someone who is still approaching prime age as opposed to on the other side of it. That, I think that he seems like odds would be with him the most to me, that he's still young enough and still performing at his highest level or close enough to his highest level that I think he would be the one that I would entrust at this point.
100% the same for me, and he's also been durable, and I think we all probably read the article that Sahadev did about the Cubs, basically a deep dive into how the Cubs pitching infrastructure works now, their pitching lab, and it's hard to imagine anyone who would use that information better than Kyle Hendricks, so I'm very interested to see what.
Other than maybe Luke Haggerty.
Luke Haggerty too, yeah, exactly, yeah, more physical Frankenstein-y lab. But I do think also just watching the one appearance by Hendricks in the spring that I've gotten to see on TV. His shit was, I don't want to overreact. Like, it's hard to not overreact about how good Darvish looks too. But his shit was moving like crazy.
It was like Maddox type stuff. Yeah. I watched that start. Yeah.
Yeah. So I totally agree. Hendricks would be what I'm playing on too. But it's a rotation where you could see any of the 5 if they're healthy too.
And I think that also plays. I'm sorry to cut you off, Ken. I was just going to real quick say I think that also plays into the short series thing. With these guys are getting older, but if you have those, I guess it would be 4 of them, but. Pick who you want. Mm-hmm. If those guys are healthy, which is always the big if. Like I take that rotation over just about anybody in baseball.
And you have to consider too that Kyle Hendricks at this point now has a pretty legit track record of really stepping up big in big important postseason games between the NLCS winner in 2016, Game 7, and hell, he pitched great in Game 3 of the World Series too, and then Game 1 of the Nationals. He outdueled Strasburg, for God's sake.
Absolutely, so, that is. I feel like that's a frequently forgotten game that he
outdueled Strasburg. Strasburg had a perfect game through like 6 innings or no hitter, and
he outlasted
was right
him.
there with him.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good question.
Yeah, and this kind of makes me think of something, a little digression that kind of ties this discussion into our rant from 5 minutes ago. That one of my Baseball Prospectus colleagues, Matt Trueblood, had an article about a month and a half or 2 months ago. He's someone who's kind of has a constant contrarian theory streak about him when he talks baseball. But his thought about this offseason was that the Cubs recognize that where they've fallen behind the rest of like the elite teams of baseball is not so much in terms of the roster construction, but in terms of all the little analytical elements that go into underlying the roster. And his thought was that this offseason they invested heavily, instead of in the players, in kind of beefing up their staff, not just analytically, but in communicating the analytics to the players. So I think this pitching lab has a lot to do with this new direction, the hiring of like people like Craig Breslow, the Yale alum, who is now one of the guys going in between the players in the analytics department, and having Hottovy become the pitching coach. And
I'm excited about that.
That's super interesting, and it's honestly something that I have not thought about. But because that type of spending is not sexy spending, but it is still money that the Cubs are spending. And while you're not going to ever rationalize with me that the Cubs didn't have money to sign players this offseason, but that's really interesting. If the approach was like, hey, we feel really good about the guys that we have, but obviously there was some disconnect from our coaches to them, from whatever we were providing them information-wise. If we can make sure that is at an elite level, then they will in turn be at an elite level.
Right. And that's something that at least the thought makes me think that it's something that they see, that like a team like Houston is considered like the absolute elite of connecting their analytics side with the actual on-field performance of the players. And if they see that there's a gap between where they are and where Houston is, I think it's good that they decide that with the level of talent they've got, we really need to make sure that we're playing up to par with the other elite teams in the league. Because you could very easily and quickly fall behind in something like that, given how much the game has changed even from when they won the World Series 2 years ago to this point. So
yeah, and I mean, I assume you've both read the Cubs Way, the Verducci book. Like, the amount that the Cubs were behind in that department prior to Epstein taking over was honestly embarrassing, is the only way to describe it. Like, people literally printing out stats, like not even using computers, things that were so unbelievable.
And they were so far behind the rest of the league that it was effectively like they weren't playing in the same league, and that is what the results said for the most part too, with a couple of blips. You know, was they were them
being good when they were over that time. That was the mistake. You know what I mean? Like, they should have been as bad as they were for most of our lives because they weren't run proproperly.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, we do have another question. This is a two-part question. Right, I think this is the last one.
Cool. Let's take one more question for now, then we'll get into our list.
Well, I mean, this is something we kind of touched on before, but why is Kimbrel still out there? Do you any quick thoughts on that? Is it just a weird collusive thing?
Yeah, I have the quickest thought possible. Collusion. Yeah. There we go.
There we go. Next. Yeah. I mean,
ask Mark Reynolds, ask Brad Brock, ask a whole lot of guys. Yeah. Yep. What's going on here?
Right. And even beyond not getting signed, something that specifically the people Ken just mentioned all said, and Liriano too, said that they got these same offers for the same amount of money at exactly the same time.
Yeah, come on.
It seems weird to just not be hiding it better than that. Right. The timing more than anything.
And there are so many teams that are refusing to make any big moves in the offseason, going against, any logical reason. You have from teams like the Yankees, for example, who for years have been saying they've been trying to get under the tax threshold so that when they have the opportunity to have, a Harper or a Machado on the open market, that's when they would go for it. And the Yankees all of a sudden decide, no, we don't need those guys. You have the Braves, who just built a goddamn new ballpark.
The Braves made the least sense to me in terms of why they weren't spending more this offseason. Yeah. They could have had Harper, you feel like.
Right. And they had their players arrived ahead of schedule, just like the 2015 Cubs did. But unlike finding a Zobrist and a Hayward, they just decided, we're going to invest in, the Dave & Buster's next to the park instead.
Yeah, we're going to bring back Markakis for very little money. Yeah, Dave & Buster's is, people play those Papa shots a lot. That's eventually that money's going to come back around. Yeah. And Kimbrel, and specifically Kimbrel, you get the feeling, would like to go back to Atlanta, and Atlanta doesn't really have a shutdown closer either.
I guess they have Vizcaino?
Vizcaino and AJ Minter.
And Vizcaino gets hurt all the time, it seems like.
So Vizcaino, the remaining piece from the Tommy La Stella deal. And now we have ultimately turned Vizcaino into La Stella into Connor Lillis White. Yeah.
I also just want to reiterate how much I despise the new Braves ballpark, as I think the only one of the three of us who's been there, right? Have you guys been?
I've not been.
I've not yet, no.
Yeah, it was like being in a mall and then, also there's baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's what happens when you move from the city into the suburbs.
Right. Yeah, which is quite literally what they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into all right
into the meat of it.
Yeah, let's do some predicting. Let's do some predicting stuff. Do you have any you want to start with, Adam, or should I?
No, go for it.
Okay, let's start big. Let's start big. Overall Cubs MVP this season. Overall Cubs MVP. Ken, you kick it.
I will go with the guy that I wish we had 4 eyes in the field. That's a really awkward way of calling that back. But yeah, Chris Bryant.
Yeah, no, there was only one referenced in such a way, so I believe that is.
I stripped my mind, and suddenly all the words fell away, and I was lost.
I did just buy software so I can hit music cues, hit sound effect cues and stuff. We'll get something for that next time.
I can't say it's a ballsy pick, but it is a good pick.
I mean. Yeah, you have an extremely motivated Chris Bryant.
Yeah.
If you want ballsy, sure, I'll go with the thing that I wrote at Cubs Den about a month ago. Chris Bryant is going to have a better year than Bryce Harper.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And why I say that is because over 3 of the 4 years of his career, that has been the case.
Right.
I think, I think Chris Bryant is a better player most of the time than Bryce Harper. I think overall better player most of the time when you take everything into account.
Yeah, Chris Bryant is where you go when you want a consistently outstanding, upper-level, great performance. Bryce Harper you take if you think that 10-win season is somehow still tangible, which is great. I certainly, and especially in that ballpark, that might help him out. But you look at the evidence, and it's you take KB 10 times out of 10.
With
that.
I'm going to say, I mean, it's hard to pick anybody other than Bryant, but for the sake of changing it up a little bit, I think I'm going to say Contreras. I think this could be the year that what we've seen of him that we love kind of takes over. And the problems that he had last year, I think are the anomaly. I don't think this is a case of like, Addison Russell just like is a 240 hitter or whatever. And
my greatest prediction from last year's preview: Addison Russell's not that good
on the field or off.
Yeah.
But I do think I'm very excited to see, and also to see what Contreras will be able to do defensively, because I think that he is at least prideful enough to try to make some of the changes that people have recommended to him about actually staying in the crouch longer and not hopping up every 2 seconds, because framing has always been a big issue for him.
And it got worse last year, unfortunately, even though going into the season, we knew that he had to work on it. But that's one of the things that fell off.
Yeah, and his first year up in the majors, his framing numbers were pretty good. His first year, it wasn't a full season, obviously, but his framing numbers were pretty good. And then they were not good, and then they were horrendous. And so it's part of the thing where I just don't trust framing numbers. That's not a real thing. It clearly is. But I don't trust the scope of them, really. I don't trust, there are some numbers that would tell you that Yasmani Grandal was the MVP 2 years ago, which I just don't think that's the case. Right. I don't think it's that big a difference. But yeah, I have, bleeding into a question for later, which some of these will do, but I very much believe in a Wilson Contreras bounce back because there's just too much skill there for him not to be as good as we've seen him be. And I don't think he can possibly be as bad framing-wise as he appeared to be last year. And he's getting tips from his brother, William Contreras, who's a top 100 catching prospect with the Braves, who was coaching him on a quarter turn with the glove as he receives the ball that apparently he wasn't doing before. Seems like something someone would have picked up on besides his younger brother, but who knows?
But I mean, offensively, I think it's easy to forget that he carried the Cubs in parts of 2017.
He was the best player in the National League in that August
year.
Yes.
Oh my God!
2 years ago, yes, he just could. It felt like he was hitting 2 homers a game and just lasering everything.
Yeah.
Have you seen the interview that he gave with Kelly Kroll back in the middle of last week?
I have not.
I believe so, but go ahead.
Yeah, it is definitely worth checking out. A very interesting, very honest and insightful about who he was last year. That he admits that because he broke out offensively in 2017, that he kind of got a little bit complacent by the middle of last year and had stopped doing what he feels is the pregame work necessary to maintain. He's realized that he needs to maintain that level, and it's really, as I say, he is very, very self-critical. Like, if he were more self-flagellating, he would be the villain in a Dan Brown novel.
Yeah, he and that echoes the latter part of that echoes something Schwarber said after the season ended. I remember reading, I forget whose piece it was, but that Schwarber was talking to Contreras for a long time after the last game, and then Schwarber came to talk to reporters after that and said no one cares more than that guy, right. Pointing to him, which I thought is great and a cool thing for Schwarber to make sure everyone else knows. And yeah, he was Contreras was very upfront and just said, like, I don't think I did enough. I thought I was there. And I think wherever you are, and there's going to be some meatballs who are like, very angry at Contreras about that. But think about your own jobs. Has anyone honestly not had that feeling where you did get a little complacent? Like, I certainly have, where I thought, like, oh, my life's going to be this level now. Okay. And then you stop hustling for a second and, not even that you're not trying, but you're just not doing extra. You're not, you're not chasing as hard. And it's very exciting to hear that Contreras is, on the warpath, because there's Madden is right when he says there's no one who has more talent.
I honestly believe that there is a 30 home run, 100 RBI season in him.
Easy. I think he can hit 300 too, and the guy takes walks. Yeah,
does bat flips on walks. I love that. Who's your MVP, Kevin?
My MVP, I think sort of like you guys say, I think Ken's probably right. If Chris Bryant's healthy and Chris Bryant, I think I think he'll win.
He'd be on the MVP.
I think he'll win the
MVP on almost any team.
Yes. So I think that's the case. But just because, and it looks good so far, but just because shoulder shit scares me a lot, I will say, Anthony Rizzo had a real he was hurt. He does get hurt by the shift more than almost anybody at times, as you can see from the first half of last year. But if you can see from the second half of last year, few hitters were more consistent and better. It was almost the best version of Rizzo that we've seen. I feel like the first month or two of 2015, maybe he was just going bananas, but he was really good the second half of last year, and I think he looks like he's in better shape than I've seen him just physically. He looks leaner. He's crushing the ball. So I'm going to say we're going to see the best version of Anthony Rizzo this year. This will be his best year, and so yeah, I'll say Rizzo.
Yeah, and I mean it would be easy. There's so many other people like. Baez was for sure the MVP of the Cubs last year, and he could just as easily do that again this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would be hard to have that good of a season, but I think he's that good, so it's not out of the question for him to do that. And again, I totally agree, Kevin. I think people were so insulting towards Rizzo. I'm talking about Cubs Twitter, but like he had a bad first month and a half, basically, and then was who he always is, which is somebody who averages like 30 and 100 and hits 300 and takes walks and plays great defense.
Yeah, when he was bad, he was also hitting into like incredible shit luck too. So
right, he needs to play in the Atlantic League where they have banned the shift. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, and I think you have to ride a hoverboard to first too in the Atlantic. I think.
Yeah.
Rizzo just has the look of a player that would fit in on like the Long Island Ducks, doesn't he?
Absolutely. He should. I think after he retires, I wouldn't be surprised if he does like a charity day once a year where he goes and plays for the Ducks or something.
I would travel to see that. Honestly, my love for Tony is that deep.
Yeah.
You look at Rizzo's stats at the end of the year. I mean, those look like those are Anthony Rizzo stats.
Yeah.
And the fact that he put those up after that horrendous month and a half at the start, is the indication of how good he was.
Yes,
and how consistently good, because that's another thing that I picked up on last year, and I think we mentioned this at one point. We had been talking for like 45 minutes last year without even mentioning Rizzo once. And it's not because we don't appreciate him. It's because he's so consistently good that he's not the first person that comes to mind all the time when you think of like who's going to improve the most or who's going to, because he's been who he is for a long time.
His value is you get to plug him in and forget about it, and you get to that is
and
the
that
cornerstone.
Is a huge value.
You build your team around that.
Yeah, and he gets to be the face and the beating heart of this team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Let's do Cubs breakout player of the year.
You want to kick this one off?
Sure. A big part of me really wants to say Ian Happ on this one. I think, but it's basically, I really believe in the person. I think he's an interesting dude who you see a little more color coming out of him all the time, and I think he seems more comfortable than ever. He's a very intense guy in a good way, and I love his skill set, except for one thing. He's basically the worst in the world at hitting balls in the strike zone. That sucks.
Occasionally balls do appear in the strike zone, so it's kind of necessary.
He's the worst. Yeah, I shouldn't say worst in the world at hitting. Worst in the world at making contact. I think he was literally the worst in the majors at making contact with balls in the strike zone last year. I'd have to double check, but he was. If he wasn't, he was very close to it.
Which is so bizarre.
It's bizarre, and that is a. So I'm hesitant to pick him as the breakout because that's just you got to be able to hit a strike. So, but I do think he'll at the very least be rookie Happ level, which was great. So I think he'll be,
and hopefully more time at second base, which is something we've all talked about a lot.
Yes. So I will say my pick for breakout is Schwarber. I think Schwarber's coming into this year with nearly the amount of at bats in the majors that Baez had going into last year, and I think we are going to see that level of a jump from Kyle Schwarber. I think he's sort of, he's done many things trying to improve, but getting back to an old batting stance, something he's more comfortable in. God, he looks great this spring, which I know spring means nothing, yada, yada, but he's hitting the ball the opposite way more than we're used to seeing him. I think he's just going to be... I think he's going to come close to the thing that Theo said that they thought about Schwarber when they got him, where we're going to take a David Ortiz and park him in left field. I think he's going to be a big-time...
Yeah, leave him there for 3 years until the DH comes to the NL, and then he can DH.
Yeah, and he's a decent left fielder now, too.
Yeah.
But he's good in the outfield.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, at least now there's a future where we could conceivably watch Schwarber as a Cub forever.
Yes.
Which is what I want.
And, the DH coming in would also it would let everybody. It would be nice to give everyone a day off.
Ken, if you don't mind me going next, I'm going to put in my vote.
What if Ken did?
He might. He might.
Go ahead.
Albert Almora.
Nice.
I think this is the year that he proves that he's an everyday outfielder.
I would love to see it.
That would mean I'd like to see that first half of Albert Almora. But part of it is that first half was BABIP driven, so he's going to have to figure out a way to be consistently good without relying on 370 on balls in play.
It is, man, if you could give his contact skill to Ian Happ, that would just make those two guys one player, and we really got something.
Mm-hmm. Ian Happamora?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. Alien Happamora. Yeah.
That'd be the one way you could make Ian Happ smile on the field, I guess.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I do think he's secretly interesting.
Yeah. Who?
Happ.
Yeah. Oh, I think he's certainly interesting. Yeah, as a dude. And I really like Almora, and he's a guy that everyone on the team, weirdly, everyone on the team seems to, not that it's weird that they respect him, but seems to be held in really high esteem by people on the team. As a guy who's 24 and was one of the later arrivers among the core, this is a guy who, people really respect as a guy, as kind of a leader-ish guy in the clubhouse, and obviously a great defense, great contact. Don't want to be too launch angle-y, but as I was saying to Adam earlier, Almora is a guy where you put a couple degrees of launch angle in there, and it could be a lot more fun.
Yeah, and to that point, Albert Almora's biggest offensive tool is contact. So I would love if he were the breakout performer this year, because that would mean you'd have somebody besides Zobrist in the lineup who can break up kind of the power or strikeouts brigade that sometimes becomes Zobrist and Rizzo, I should say.
Right.
And have more of a multifaceted attack, so you wouldn't have just a bunch of power pitchers throwing fastballs. Past has been the case in times when they've slumped. So yeah, absolutely, would very much like that to see that happen.
Who you got breaking out?
Who's your breakout?
Yeah, I'm stealing Kevin, and I'm going Schwarber as well. And that's because, Schwarber, you couldn't deliberately hit as bad as he did with runners in scoring position in situations.
It's insane.
That seemed almost fluky. I don't think he's not clutch. He clearly has proven himself to be clutch. Yeah,
that has to normalize itself somehow, and in doing so, that's gonna provide a much better batting average number. His on base will probably go up a little bit because of that.
His confidence.
Yeah, definitely confidence, and we've seen, given it over the past couple of years, how much effort he's put into improving his defense and dropping the weight he needs to become kind of a more well-rounded baseball player, pun intended.
Yes. Ironically, less rounded.
Yes,
less well-rounded.
Yes.
But he is someone who very clearly puts in the effort, and if Wilson Contreras is the one who cares the most, he's not that far behind. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I absolutely think that this could be the Schwarber year that we've all been waiting to see since the 2016 World Series, which wasn't the Schwarber year, but was certainly the Schwarber week and a half.
Right. Absolutely, yeah. Enough, for sure.
Now, I don't know if you made a distinction or what the plan was, but so that's breakout.
Yeah.
Do we have a bounce back?
We could do bounce back. We'll do bounce back real quick. Yeah. I would say for me, if it's not Darvish or Contreras, then you're pretty bummed out, because it's I would say it's almost you really got to hope for one of those. Mm-hmm. I think I'll say Contreras just because I just believe that the second half was a fluke, basically. Right. I believe he's what he was before, and I think he's going to be a little better than that. So I would say him. Yeah. Who you got?
I mean, I think Darvish is the easy answer if you're talking about a comeback player. But it's he did literally almost nothing last year. So even if you get a full season out of him, where his ERA is 4, that's still, I guess, better than last year.
Sure. Yeah, and I think if he's healthy, he will be better than that. And God, he looks great so far, and he's funny too. He's cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Who you got, Ken? Dunsing?
Yeah. Well, I'm calling Bryant MVP, so if that's not the definition of a bounce back, I don't know what it is.
That's true. I kind of spaced on that, saying that, because that is.
But it's because it's almost assumed,
right?
That of course Bryant is going to bounce back. If he's at all healthy, of course he's going to be great.
Yeah.
I will say to the point of Yu Darvish, I love the logic that both the Cubs and especially the Chicago media is using to kind of play up the narrative of Darvish, saying that, oh yeah, he's going to bounce back this year. He's speaking English now.
Oh, God.
That's the ticket, sure.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like he didn't learn all the English in January.
No.
Like, he spoke English before that. He just didn't speak English to you. But yeah.
Sure, if we're doing most improved giver of interviews, then yeah, I guess.
I think that's absolutely got to be Yu Darvish. Hell yeah. He's talking about who he's going to peg on purpose. It's weird he didn't get fined, even as a joke.
So funny.
Yeah.
I do have one more that I want to throw in, and then I'll let
ahead.
you take the lead. None of us want to be doom and gloom, but we are realists to a degree.
Sure.
Who is your person that you would say is due for a regression, a bounce down season?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I'll say. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't want to say it, but the peripherals insist that at some point John Lester is going to fall off, and he did 2 years ago have that rough 2017. So he would be the one that I'd be less surprised if we had a lesser Lester year, which is, I guess, how Wordsworth would put it or something like that.
Yeah, that's a headline that hopefully won't happen, but could. Yes.
Lester seems to feed also off of people saying that, yeah, you are about ready to be done and figure out a new way.
And Hamels is kind of like that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are exactly the two guys I was thinking. I think it's one of your 35-year-old lefties. I do think Hamels' improvement, just the kind of guy he is, just being in a race, I think genuinely does improve him. And I think some of that's going to carry over. I also think that he found something in his delivery when he came over here. I think Hadavy's going to work great with him. So, but yeah, I'm sort of exactly where Ken is. And if Lester's going to feed off it, please someone forward this, and I'll say he'll be terrible if that helps. That would be great. I don't think he's going to be terrible, but I do think if you're looking for regressions, just this guy's made 32 starts every year here. He has and then has gone on into the playoffs every year, and he has been. Yeah,
can you hear me knocking on wood in the background?
Exactly, and it's just a lot to expect a guy of that age with that many innings in a row to keep being the level he's been. So I think if you're predicting heartlessly, I would say you almost have to say Lester, but
I was going to say, and I mean, I guess it's kind of the same category, but a position player. I think Zobrist is due for regression, certainly offensively, in the sense that he hit over 300 last year. So
yeah,
he's amazing, but I don't see him hitting over 300 this year.
And at this point, we're also talking about the two best Cub free agent signings of the past 30 years.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, so just want to make sure we throw that out there, too.
And two guys who I still, even if they had bad seasons, I'm excited to see them in the playoffs. These are guys I just believe in no matter what, And I don't think they'll be bad, but
no.
I think I think the upside of this team is it's like progression to the mean team this year is the 2019 Cubs. I just think everyone's going to be more who they actually are, and I think that's going to be a lot of improvement. But yeah, we've done a lot of hitter stuff. Let's do pitcher. A pitcher question: who's going to be the most important bullpen arm?
Pedro Strop.
Pedro Strop.
Yeah, because he is again the Cubs' best bullpen arm since first couple years of Marmol. I would say at least, and probably even more so than that, given that he's given us 5 incredible bullpen years.
It's the Rizzo of the bullpen, kind of. People forget about him. You talk about everyone else, and then you look up, and he's been one of the best of all time for the Cubs.
I love that comp, yeah.
And again, one of the hearts of the team, too, clearly, and the fashion model of the team. Which is,
yes.
That moment at the Cub convention when Baez, when Dempster asked Baez who the best-dressed guy on the team was, and Javi said, "Oh, me." And then all of a sudden, Pedro Strop just appears from the back out of nowhere, struts on stage, and the entire ballroom lost its shit. Just didn't need to say anything. It was so perfect.
That's amazing.
Pedro Strop's music hit, and he made a run into the ring.
Yeah, but Strop. I mean, he's going to be assuming the hamstring is okay. He's going to be the closer for the first month, and then he's going to be the 8th inning bridge guy when they get Morrow back, and then that probably means he's also going to be closing in the last month too. So
right,
yeah, they're the two biggest roles you're going to have in this bullpen, and they're the same guy. So Pedro Strop is my guy.
Great answer.
I actually am going to say C.J. Edwards. I think Carl Edwards Jr. To me, he's coming into his he's like the bullpen equivalent of Albert Almora, where it's like either he is who he's been, or this is the time that he really puts it together. And I think last year was hugely disappointing for him, and just as a fan to watch him have such trouble with his command, because you can tell it's driving him nuts. It's no different than Chatwood. Like, he wants to throw strikes, and he's not being able to do so. So I think, especially with the injuries that we're looking at right now, with Morrow not being available probably till sometime in May, if then, and Strop probably being out to start the season, and inevitable other injuries that are going to come up, I think if CJ can really step up and be that like reliable 8th inning guy, I think that would do wonders for the bullpen.
I also wrote down Carl Edwards. Ken convinced me with his though, so I think that is actually just thinking about how also what would probably ticket to Strop from Edwards for me. I wrote down Edwards is that. I do think Edwards, and I wrote this. I wrote the player profile on Edwards in the offseason for BP Wrigleyville, RIP. But one of the things I wrote there was that I think what Edwards is, and Edwards is he's almost Hendricksian in that you look at his numbers and you forget that he has been great the whole time. And I think and his numbers are great, and him at his best Edwards at his best is a ceiling that almost no reliever in the world can touch. He was better than Hader for the first month and a half last year. Yeah. So I think obviously we know Edwards made the change. He's doing the Kenley Jansen pause, which for a guy with natural cutting fastball, that sounds great. Just do some Kenley Jansen for the next 10 years. That'd be awesome. So, but I do, one thing I wrote in the profile of him is that I think what Edwards is he's closer to a Kimbrel, where he's a 60 inning reliever. Whereas he's not a C-check where it's 80 and, Strop's going to get you more innings than that. But I do think if Edwards is at his best, you're playing an 8-inning game. I think that you're playing an 8-inning game in the most important games, I think, is what it is. So you can bring him in to blow away people if he is at his best. So I think that is like a just truly elite level reliever if he's right. And Strop, really, it's like, I also, my two favorite ways for a Cubs World Series to end would be Rizzo walk-off homer or Pedro Strop striking out the last guy and just absolutely combusting on, on the mound. So I so want Pedro Strop to close a World Series out. I'm hopeful for that.
I was honestly surprised when Pedro Strop got out of like a 2-on nobody out jam in Milwaukee in September of last year and got the save that he didn't just run up and go down Bernie Brewer's slide. I would not put that past him for a second. I
wouldn't put it past him to slide up Bernie Brewer's slide. Just I believe in him. Yeah. But I think those are all good picks. Let's do one bold prediction. Let's do your book, which I think Ken hinted at before, and then we'll almost be to the team prediction part. But
I've got a mic drop of a bold prediction this time around.
Shit, good. Oh damn. Yeah. I feel like
Yeah, you remember I think my shining moment that you've alluded to a couple times on the podcast previously from our season preview last year was when I promised you guys that Jason Hayward would have like one moment where the spotlight found him and he stepped up in a way, and of course became the walk-off grand slam against the Phillies. So this year I'm going to double the hell down on the spotlight finding somebody when you least expect it, and he's going to step up in a way that nobody thought he could. And I'm going to say Tyler Chatwood.
All right.
There's going to be a Tyler Chatwood game this year. I don't know when. I don't know what it's going to involve, but at some point he's going to come in and the stuff is going to be there and there will be command for at least one day, and everyone will just go, this is your moment, man.
That is great.
Yeah.
That's a great, very specific very specific one that I think you can even see hints of right now. And obviously, we know the brain is a crazy thing. The body pitching is a crazy thing. Who knows what'll happen? But Chatwood's basically had one bad outing and then a lot of really good outings.
Well, and he's also, if you look at his stats in terms of starting and coming out of the bullpen, his bullpen numbers are great. And part of that is because he's facing not as good of hitters in spring training games. But his bullpen ERA, I think he's pitched over 7 innings, 0 ERA. And in the 2 times he's started, it's like a 7 ERA.
I mean, if what the function of Tyler Chatwood ends up being is a multi-inning shutdown right-handed reliever who's just, getting, when he's at his best, he has a high-velocity fastball, a real biting curve, and he gets a ton of ground balls. That'd be real exciting if you could just plug him in for a couple innings in important games at some point. Yeah, that's a great bold one. I don't have a great bold one off the top of my head yet. You go, Adam, next.
To be honest, I actually was thinking about Chatwood, but I think I'll take it in a different direction here. And here's my bold prediction. Everyone was so worried about the basically power outage, I think, of the Cubs last year was a big narrative. I am going to predict that 5 Cubs hit more than 20 home runs.
That's good. I like that.
Is that bold? Is that not bold enough?
No, I think that's bold, and I can definitely see it. It's hard not to fall into the trap of looking at your team and just assuming they're all going to do what you think the best thing of them is. But I think they can get to 20 without people.
I think at the very least, and maybe I'll even bump it up to 25. I'll make it even bolder.
Sure.
I think that there is no reason that Rizzo, Bryant, Contreras, Schwarber, and Javi cannot hit 25 home runs.
If any of them don't hit 25, it's kind of disappointing, probably.
Right. Yeah, that's realistic for every one of those guys. So yeah, absolutely. I'm for this boldness. Sure.
Here we go. Kyle Hendricks wins 20.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
I'm gonna say I sort of had a thing about that, but that's bolder than what I was gonna say. We talk about the Kyle Hendricks ERA. He threw, I believe he hit 199 on the innings last year. I think he fell just an inning short of the 200 marker, and I think I think he's going to have. I don't think he's going to have an ERA as low as he had in 2016, but I think he's weirdly just not gotten the weirdo win stat in most of it. Yeah, I think he had 16 in 2016, and then he had 14 last year, I believe. So I think he's just going to have the weird luck that gets you wins. He's going to be he's going to be better than he almost ever has been this year, and I'll say he'll get 20 wins.
Nice.
And you know what? I can't. I guess I can't add one, but who cares? There's no rules.
You can. Yeah.
I said this to Kevin when we were watching some highlights before we started recording. I have this feeling about Jose Quintana this year. And I don't know if it's just based on blind optimism or the little bit that I've seen of him in spring training. But, I mean, there's no way to construe it other than he's been disappointing since the Cubs traded for him. And I think he's going to figure it out this year and get back closer to what he was like as the ace of the White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, he's been usable, but not elite by any
right,
means.
Yeah, you're not making that trade for somebody who's going to be a 4 or 5 ERA and get through maybe 5 or 6 innings.
Right, not at all.
Right.
And the big spring storyline with him that they've been hyping up is the addition of the changeup to his repertoire, or at least convincing him to throw it. I mean, he had it before, but apparently did not want to throw it ever. Which,
right.
Seems like if that's part of your repertoire, that's kind of the definition of being part of your repertoire, as you occasionally use it. So
yeah. Don't leave it in the garage, buddy.
Yeah. And that might also be part of how Contreras grows as a catcher too, is being able to guide and convince pitchers to use pitches that they might not necessarily be instinctively gravitating to all the time, and still showing them that they can get the job done with it. Like that's one of those catching intangibles that they say that the real greats of the position have. So yeah, that could be honestly on both of them if they both improve and step up and make that pitch more of a weapon for him.
And it's a thing I've heard from players and coaches talking about, specifically out of the Astros organization and the Cubs as well, that when pitchers like when Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander went to the Astros, they would get advice on pitches they should be throwing that they were not throwing as often as they were. And I've heard the same thing about about the Cubs talking to their pitchers, and Cole Hamel said something along those lines too, where where almost the coaches and the research tell you to do something that, as a pitcher, especially if you're a veteran like Quintana is, and that feels wrong because it's just not the sequencing you've used before. I don't throw this pitch in that situation. And then it takes a while to trust, like, okay, there's a reason why we're doing this.
Right.
So that could be part of it.
And maybe that speaks to what Ken said before about improving the infrastructure for pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, that's part of it too. Yeah.
Let's do a weird one. Mid-season trade prediction. Who is going to be the new Cub coming in at the trade deadline? I think
you were high on Zach Britton last
year.
I
picked Zach Britton last year. I still think that's a move I would recommend making. But if the Cubs get someone, if they get someone at the deadline, who's going to be the deadline Cubs edition? It's a weird question because the whole world is eligible.
Can I give you the least sexy prediction ever?
Yeah.
This offseason, the Cubs are going to trade for Will Smith.
For Will Smith at the midseason?
Yeah.
I think Will Smith was one of the names I wrote down under this.
But here's the bold part. I'm talking about the actor.
You're talking about Welcome to Earth. Yeah. Hell yeah. They're getting the actor. He's trying new things now. He's trying to stand
It's part
up.
of his bucket list. He's going to be a baseball player.
He has to. Yeah. What position?
Pitcher.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I couldn't think of something funny.
No, I mean, there's only so many positions.
I do. It's the most boring prediction ever, but I've always thought Will Smith would be a good fit in the bullpen, and I feel like he's going into the last year of his contract on a bad team.
With the Giants, yeah.
Giants will be selling. I'm trying to think of, most of the people who are selling, the obvious sellers are in the American League at this point.
They are. It's basically, I could definitely see, Will Smith or Tony Watson or, someone from the San Diego bullpen, if they aren't contending, getting sold off relatively cheaply. This will be unsexy, kind of, just because it's happened already. I think the Cubs are going to go get Terrence Gore at the deadline again because they liked how much that worked out as a weapon. And Terrence Gore is on a split contract, major league, minor league, with the Royals right now. The Royals literally just signed everybody who steals bases. That's all they did this offseason. They got Billy Hamilton as well. They've got Adalberto Mondesi
already got Merrifield.
Merrifield, who led the league. So I'm going to say, if we want to make it a little weirder, I'll say the Cubs finally go get Cub killer Billy Hamilton at the deadline to be weird.
Are they going to get Jesse Chavez back?
I would, I love him.
So yes, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Texas is required legally to give the Cubs at least 5 pitchers.
Yes. So I'll take it.
You got any big blockbusters, Ken?
I'm trying to think of who's on the Rangers roster. Who else that they could pillage?
Chatwood for Joey Gallo.
I was going to say it was always about Little League buddies Harper and Bryant possibly playing together. How about the other Little League buddy Joey Gallo comes in because the Cubs need more strikeouts. Yeah.
It's hard to see a blockbuster happening,
right, with
this team. But.
If a blockbuster happens, honestly, I think it's going to be the other way. I think it would be that shit went completely haywire and then someone big gets sold off. So
like a Schwarber or somebody like that.
Yeah. So I'm fingers crossed that.
Because they're restocking the minor leagues, too, for the next wave of prospects. So you're not going to be trading Nico Horner for anybody at this point.
No. All right, so let's do now the big team prediction. This is a big one. We should come up with a prize among us for whoever gets closest or hits it on the head.
We were all close last year if we're talking about wins.
Yeah,
I think we
said
were
100.
between 95 and 100, all of us.
So we'll figure out a prize TBD, whether it's, dinner or whatever, or a winner's choice up to a certain dollar amount. But, how many wins are the Cubs going to have this year? How many are they going to go with? If anyone wants to go first, feel free. Otherwise, I'm happy to as well.
I'm going to say 90.
90.
I'm going to say they won 95 last year and made no changes this offseason, so 95.
Great.
I like it.
It's not. This is a bad move from Price is Right rules for me. 93 was what I had down before. Weirdly, and sort of exactly what Ken said. It's they didn't really do anything to the team,
but the other teams did.
The other teams did. That's the reason I take 2 wins off. But I also think this team is better than last year's team. They did nothing, but I think they are better. So
let me clarify. I think 90 wins means the Cubs win the Central. I'm not saying 90 and they finish third.
Do we all think the Cubs are winning the Central?
Yes.
I do too.
Bold.
I know, bold on a Cubs podcast that we do for free. Weird. Yeah, exactly.
We've all called the same thing.
So now I guess we go to who makes the playoffs. Predict all 10 playoff teams.
Go ahead, Kevin.
All right, sure.
Orioles, the Royals,
Marlins.
Yeah, I mean they play in that they play off. They play off the field. They just play off television.
Yes, the Sandman sweeps them off.
Yes, wop wop, get out of here, Orioles. I've got my division winners in the NL: Nats, Cubs, Dodgers. I think the Nationals. Probably the only weird pick there. It's not even weird, I don't think. But I do think the Nationals still happen to be the best team in the East for me. Even though they lost Harper, Juan Soto is stupid good. I'm not a huge believer in Robles as a prospect. Actually, he hits the ball crazy soft, which is not an encouraging thing to see. He'll be great in center field defensively, but they signed Corbin. That rotation's still nasty. And Sean Doolittle kicks ass. So I have Nationals, Cubs, Dodgers. My wild cards are Phillies, and I really went between. You know what? Fuck it. Not the Phillies. I'm gonna say the Brewers and the Cardinals.
Okay. Interesting.
So nationally, let's do NL first, and then
I think I'm on board with all of that. Honestly, those division winners were where I was going, and I'm debating between Brewers, Cardinals, and then Phillies, and maybe Braves.
Yeah, I like the Braves. I think even though the Braves didn't do stuff, I still do like that roster.
Now, what about the Mets? Because Ken, I know you were kind of high on the Mets last year, and that obviously didn't. Sorry to bring that up, but
I learned my lesson from last year, which means the Mets are going to win the East.
Yeah.
The year I stopped being scared of them is when they win the pennant.
Yeah.
Well, the NL East is the NL East has to be the hardest prediction out of every division, right?
Yeah. You could see of the four top teams, you could see scenarios for both a 95 win team, and then honestly, you could probably see scenarios for at least three of them, where they crash out and win like 75 or 80.
Right. And I think the Reds and Mets are going to be very interesting to watch because the Braves are so young that there really can't be a big sell-off. But if the Reds and Mets find themselves as two fourth-place teams, which I think is relatively likely, I think the Reds are certainly a fourth-place team, and I think the Mets are right there basically with the Braves flip-flopping. For me in the East, but the Reds and Mets could be two teams that sell off big time if they're not in it. And Brody Van Wagenen, isn't scared to make moves. The Mets made a ton of moves, so I think that could be those two teams could end up being completely different rosters in the second half.
Yeah, and the Reds. Yeah. If the Reds' attendance also, I think, is partly driving the moves they made this offseason. So if that doesn't improve either, that could also lead to a major fire sale.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth on all of this, but I'm saying for sure Dodgers, and I think I'm confident that the Dodgers are the only team that makes it out of the West. I don't see the Rockies being a wild card team this year.
I hope not. It's just weird because the West there's a bunch of shit in the West, and the Central and East are so good. So if the Rockies get on one real long good run, the Rockies could absolutely steal a wild card.
Yeah. I see the Dodgers winning the division. I see the Cubs winning the division, and I'm gonna say the Nats. And then I see my wild card teams as I'm seeing a lot of red.
I like where you're going with this.
I'm seeing Phillies and Cardinals as my wild card teams, and then I'm seeing the Brewers and Mets just on the outside looking in, like low to mid 80s, and like missing out on the wild card by a couple games.
Maybe my real bold prediction is it's going to be a 3-way tie for the wild card. So I can get all. Yes. It's going to be Phillies, Brewers, Cardinals all tied for the wild card, and then we're going to have fucking chaos, which will be wonderful.
Just a week of 1-game playoffs.
Yeah,
it's got to happen eventually because there's always that article the last week of the season that's like, if all of these things happen,
it came kind of
every
close.
Team in baseball will be tied.
Yes. Fucking social. It's Bernie's America, everybody. It's socialist. It's just you're only allowed 81 wins.
Do you want to do AL?
Yeah, let's do it.
And then do like playoff predictions and wrap this puppy up?
Yep. AL. Who wants to kick off AL?
Well, let's go with the division winners are pretty easy ones: Red Sox, Indians, Astros. You would assume the Yankees will get one of the wild card spots, even with Severino being out for a month. So with that said, I'm going to double down on last year's playoffs. And the A's will surprise everyone by making it to the wild card again this year. And this year, the A's will beat the Yankees. How about that?
I like that. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a little bold too. I think, I think because a lot of things went right for the A's last year, and they didn't do a lot of changing. They got Jurickson and Profar, which is cool. And the A's always have cool ideas. I'll say actually, I have the same division winners, which is not too much of a surprise. So I have Astros. Sure.
Astros, Indians, and Red Sox are the division winners. And then I have I'm going the way you did for the NL Central, but in the AL, I actually think the two wildcard teams are the Yankees and the Rays.
Okay, so stacking up on the East.
Yeah.
I've got the Yankees as the division winner with the Red Sox in the wild card, and I have the Angels as the wild card team.
I like it. And I would love to see it. I would love to see Mike Trout in the playoffs.
I'll get a little weird. Trevor Cahill going game 1.
About time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then I guess just what World Series prediction?
Sure. All right.
And you can throw in any notable along the way prediction too, if you want.
World Series. Let's go for the Cubs Red Sox that we've been hoping for since 2004, 2003 actually, and. Let's go Cubs in 7 because that seems to work out well.
Great.
All right. Go ahead, Kev.
I'll say Cubs Yankees because it's also cool in a different way, and I think also the Yankees. The way the Yankees pitching is, I think they can really stack up nastily in a short series if everything breaks the right way, and they just hit the shit out of the ball forever. So I'm going to say Yankees Cubs. Guys, you're not going to believe this. I'm going to say the Cubs are going to win the World Series. I'm going to say that because my money has done it. I've put money down online. I put money down in Atlantic City. I put $1 more than Adam did in Atlantic City. I put down $20 for our friend Sarah Sanchez. Shout out in Bleed Cubby Blues, Sarah Sanchez in AC. So my money's there. I'm sticking with it. And as I said before, I think the Cubs are going to beat the Dodgers in the NLCS again because you can only play so many players at the same time. You should have better players. Your best players should be better than the other guy's best players. I don't give as much a shit about the 39th best player on your 40-man roster.
And the Cubs beat the Yankees in how many games?
4.
Oh!
Nice.
And we're there?
What's that?
We're there in New York watching it happen?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll travel to New York if that's the case.
Hell
I like it. I'm going to say... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
Just that would be the first time, I think, in any game that counted with the Cubs winning a game at a Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
I've seen them lose several times.
And honestly, I went to the exhibition games before the 2009 season when the stadium was opening. I think the Cubs lost those too. It didn't count, but I'm pretty sure the Cubs lost them.
They lost.
Losing at Yankee Stadium is what the Cubs do for some reason.
It is.
We'll
old or new. They do not discriminate when it comes to losing at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Cubs over Astros. I think the Astros this year are what I was hoping the Cubs would be last year, which is like they win the World Series, then they lose in the LCS and have a real chip on their shoulder and do something about it. And honestly, going back to last year, the Red Sox beating the Astros in 5 games was the most impressive part of that entire playoff run to me.
Yes. I still think the Astros... We didn't talk about the Astros really at all. I mean, it's a Cubs podcast preseason thing, so that makes sense. But the Astros, I still think are kind of the best.
They're really good.
So I think it would be, and Alex Bregman kicks ass, really climbing the ranks of my favorite non-Cubs.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
I'll say Cubs in 6.
Great.
So we have the Cubs. Literally every one of the AL powerhouses in our predictions.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. We're all covering bases.
Sorry, Indians.
Yeah. And fuck Cleveland. Not the the Cleveland was always my American League team because basically Major League. I also respect that their fans actually have put they've had a rough go of it, but that team, we're pissed about what the Cubs did this offseason. They are shitting away their window. They just know they can coast to the Central title. They did not get better. Mark Zagunis would be their best outfielder, maybe, I think, right now. They should be calling the Cubs about Mark Zagunis. They just really are just rolling the dice with an 80-some win value team, basically, with some amazing players on it. Right. Cleveland doesn't deserve to, yeah, the way they've run the offseason, they don't deserve to get past the other AL powerhouses.
Yep. Well, here we are a year later, and we think the Cubs are going to be good.
Yeah, damn.
We're consistent, nothing else.
Yep, season 2. Yeah, we're a bunch of Anthony Rizzo predictors. We got 6 Cubs World Series picks in 2 years.
I'd like to go back in time and hear our podcast in like 2012 and see.
I think there's a reason we weren't doing one then.
Yeah,
that I really would. Maybe, yeah. If we get a Patreon going up, they will force us to really dig into the 2012 offseason and do a season predictions as if.
You know what though, I'm embarrassed to admit I still was optimistic, even though I knew there was no shot, because I think there's like that time hop app that says like 5 years ago you said this, and there was one that I had from like 2013 opening day Facebook status that was like, I know it's not likely, but anything can happen, and I think this is the year that the Cubs win it all. So
much of our Cub existence has been, well, I can see a way to 500, and then really margin of error from there. Game, and it's just so many years that were like that, and those weren't even the worst years. And god dang, it's so nice to be here now.
As we said last year, it's nice to be able to predict the Cubs winning the World Series and not have that feel insane.
Right.
I'm not doing it just to be an asshole. Yeah, that's like
not just to be the guy. Yeah, I'm putting it all on the Cubs. That's right. I said the Cubs.
Yeah, I do physically do that, but I mean it. And
that would have been like a pre-2016 scene in a movie of like a guy who's a degenerate gambler. Like that's the line where you're like, oh, he's too far gone. I'm putting it all on the Cubs.
Right. Show me the odds. With these odds, there's only one way to save my family.
Right.
With the money I have.
Leaving Las Vegas. They decided it was too sad, unfortunately.
Yeah, Nick Cage refused. Yeah. Well, guys, that great preview in the season with y'all once again. Can't wait to actually see the season with y'all again.
Can't wait. Same room and see a game with you guys again.
It's going to be great.
Going to be great. Follow us at awaygamespod on Twitter and Instagram at awaygamespod. And follow Ken Schultz. Ken, throw your follow info at us.
Yes, Twitter is at Ken Schultz _ SCHULTZ _ and Instagram at Ken Thin Guy.
Hell yeah. And us, I'm at Kevin McCaff, and Adam Amawala, you are.
Yep, at Adam Amawala.
Beautiful thing. Thanks for listening, everybody. Subscribe, rate if you haven't yet. Tell a friend, and go put some money on the Cubs before the season starts.